Hey everybody, welcome to another one of the Samson's Saturday mailbags, whatever they are, whatever they have been, whatever it is. I'm here on a Saturday to talk hoops with y'all, and I think a pretty fun topic today. It's something I've been thinking about for a while, and it also fits into what I talk about a lot. Is that we're thinking about what do players have to do to improve this team, to elevate this team, and what is attainable. Some of the things I'll talk about today, as far as like we're focusing on the starting lineup or the projected starting lineup. Some of the things we'll talk about today, I've been thinking about for years, have written about, Lewis has written about. There are deep dives on this stuff, but there's some things that are really hard to change, and there are some things that are more attainable. This Raptors team is not the most expensive team in the world. However, they are a team that has spent on their starting lineup. Everybody there is paid. Immanuel, RJ, Scottie, Brandon, Jakob, everyone's paid. And these guys are paid for what they have been, but also some guys are paid to improve and to become more and more. And this Raptors team is talented. And this Raptors team is a little bit top heavy, I think, projected to be. That means that starting lineup has to carry. And that's my expectation. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how the starting lineup can carry, can win big gobs of minutes. And we're going to focus on the specific player development of each guy. So I'll also say this will be shorter form because when I did 35 minutes breaking down Scottie's defense, the film work, I realized that was pretty long. And then when I did 11 minutes on the contrast between Jakob Poeltl's driving and Grady Dick's driving, I was like, that's pretty long too. And while I like going that in depth and talking about the intricacies to that degree, it doesn't have to be that long, probably. And I could probably do like 6 minutes instead of 11, work on making it a little bit more succinct rather than just, I guess, yammering on. And I do yammer. It's one of my skills. So, and I'll say as a quick thing too, because Sophia Serrano says IQ for Kuminga is what I'm hoping for. Hashtag Vision68. I'll say this because I saw people give me a bit of trouble in the last episode of Pull Up Trey. They said Samson says that the Raptors have a glut of wings, and then it was Jay, I think, who said it. Samson says the Raptors have a glut of wings, then makes the argument for why they need to get more wings. I'll just say I don't agree with Trey when Trey says that's what he wants to get. However, as a co-host, I'm facilitating the conversation. When Trey says he wants a wing, a bigger wing on the roster, I'm having that conversation with him and making it productive. So we talk about Kuminga, who's in, rumors. We talk about what Kuminga could bring or a bigger wing could bring. However, a big wing is not top of mind for me. But, you have these conversations, and I do think if the Raptors are targeting a big wing, let's say Trey and Masai have a similar vision for this team and Sophia here, then maybe Kuminga's a guy you go and look at because Kuminga's been connected to Masai before. They liked him in pre-draft, all that kind of stuff. I'll leave that there, though, because we can talk about the Raptors, the preeminent big wing in Raptors land, Scottie Barnes. And this is the start of the 5 things they can develop. And Scottie Barnes, I have had this back and forth, I think, with the listener and viewer base for some time, which is a large part of the Raptors fan base, I think, has this vision of Scottie as a driver, as an unstoppable driver, simply if he just wanted it more. Or, it's like, man, if he realized how strong he is, if he knew, and if he did it more often. But I've always looked at Scottie as more of a limited driver because of his handle, because of, he doesn't have a huge, diverse range of finishes at the bucket, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean he won't be. And he certainly is very impressive as a driver when he gets an advantageous matchup, when there isn't help side that he has to navigate, really. That's why he was so dominant as a rookie, because he was physically overmatching a lot of the guys he was matched up against. It is why in 2023, when he was with, Pascal, and Pascal was taking the number 1 wing matchup, that Scottie was able to dominate, not as much help side, all that kind of stuff. That being said, Scottie this season, despite being disappointing offensively, Lewis had this great quote during our season-ending podcast where he said, you removed the scaffolding and suddenly a building was there. And he was talking about the Raptors defense, which did improve. Joseph Cassidy, by the way, says he doesn't break down people, he breaks through them. Yes, he's a bully driver, big time bully driver, Scottie Barnes. He was working on diversifying his drives, not so much his handle, not so much, the step through and pick up points and stuff that, other players work on, but he was just diversifying where his drives would go. And he shifted so much of his offense, so much of his drives to the short mid range, to the medium mid range pull ups. And despite not being elite at that, that diversity of process, I think, will reward things down the line. And to this point, Scottie in the NBA was 53rd in drives per game this past season. He shot 46% on his drives, and that ranks 49th out of the top 53 most voluminous drivers. So he wasn't efficient. And given his physical gifts, you would expect more than the 53rd most often driver. Now, some people might say, like, there's doubles, he gets a lot of attention. He does get doubled, he does get attention. However, so do a lot of other players in the NBA. That's just where we are. Good players have to navigate a lot of attention. Good players have to overcome a lot of attention. Good players have to play make against it. Good players have to score against it. That's just how it is. And for example, like, Scottie is a limited dribbler. However, I think he is a better pull-up jump shooter than Franz Wagner, for example. Franz is a very talented driver. He's a very unique mover, but he's he's got a nasty hitch in his jumper, and it does not set itself up kindly to being the pull-up. And so Franz was at 13.3 drives per game this past season, 49% from the field, limited dribbler, special mover. Scottie, being so physically imposing as he is, can work on things in his process and try and emulate some of what Franz does, at least in the willingness. Jaylen Brown, a limited dribbler, a very strong pull-up shooter, okay? 12.7 drives per game, 52% field goal percentage. All right, there we go. He's a better pull-up shooter than Scottie. He does have a better handle, but I think Scottie could get to the Jaylen Brown handle situation. I don't think he'll ever have that first step or that back step explosion, but I think that's something that, these are players that are, you can reach where they are, or different facets of who they are. And then thirdly, RJ Barrett, 12.6 drives per game, 47% field goal. RJ is a limited dribbler himself. RJ has no pull-up prowess to speak of. He has a push shot he can get to, but he has generally a very impressive will to get to the bucket. And he has a quicker first step than Scottie. He has a more impressive last step and flexibility to twist to the rim, but he's not nearly as big. And he doesn't have some of the physical gifts, that size that Scottie has. So between Franz, Jaylen, and RJ, I think there's three different paths there, right? Like, Franz is a guy who introduces a ton of east-west into his driving at a large size. And he's a strong finisher as well. And Scottie, while not super impressive at going east-west, because he is so big, he can slow down drives and manipulate with his strength. Part of that is going to be his development as a guy on ball with his handle, so he doesn't get picked in the middle of the lane. Part of that is going to be keeping his dribble alive. And part of that is a willingness to change direction during drives. We've seen, if you've been watching the Pacers and Bucks, Pascal Siakam is not going to beat Giannis in straight lines. He is changing, zigzagging as a driver all the time. Jaylen Brown is a guy who doesn't get all the way to the bucket all that often. He is definitely supported by the Celtics as a tremendous shooting team, wider lanes to attack, less people in the gaps, but he succeeds as a driver in the short mid-range a lot too. And Scottie can emulate some of that, I think. That prowess as a short mid-range pull-up shooter, while he's not elite yet, I actually do believe that Scottie will end up a very, very strong finisher in that area of the floor. Now, the long mid-range, I'm not exactly sure, but the short mid-range, I think he has the control and I think he has the touch to end up being extremely good in that regard. And then RJ is that willingness to keep a drive going, to be vulnerable going to your last step and knowing you have to get the shot up. Scottie does not do this very often, and it's because Scottie plays with, I think, more control a lot of times. And Scottie likes to make his reads on his first step, not his last step. And that's a good thing for a lead initiator, I think, to some degree, because it means you're going to turn the ball over less, perhaps. It means you're going to operate from a point of strength more often. But I think Scottie, looking at these three guys, he can borrow process from each one of them. And he certainly can end up the best player of this group, especially when you consider his impact on defense. But I think each of these guys, Franz, Jalen, RJ, have more volume as drivers, were more efficient as drivers, and they each achieve their success on drives through different means. And Scottie can access a little bit of each of that. And of course, Scottie, big basketball brain of his, can mix and match his strengths to get the most out of every possession, down the line. He is a growing player. He is a player he's provided a lot to the Raptors already, but he certainly can provide more. And so much of what the Raptors do, I think, hinges to some degree on what Scottie Barnes can do as a big-time offensive player. And he might not be the number one next year. I think it's probably likely that Brandon Ingram will lead the Raptors in usage percentage and points per game, but Scottie will have a lot of the ball and driving the basketball, since he's a very talented passer while on the move, since he can apply the offensive rebounding pressure at the back end of his own drives. He can get the defense to change and shape shift, that kind of stuff. It looms large. It's very important. Now, RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett, I think the easiest thing for him to solve is his free throw shooting. And this one won't go that long, but it is top of mind when we think about Cosmo says, "Oh, you changed your mind on the usage for next year." Yeah, usage percentage, not usage. I think like touches per game, all that kind of stuff. I think Scottie will end up getting more than Brandon, if I had to guess. However, usage percentage is not just, it doesn't strictly diagnose how much of the ball you get. It diagnoses how many possessions you end, basically. And Ingram certainly has more proclivity towards being a possession ender as a scorer than Scottie does. And so the usage percentage, I think, will probably be Brandon. But touches, I wouldn't be surprised if the Raptors still had Scottie at the top of the mountain there. But, we'll see. Okay, RJ Barrett. It's the free throw shooting. RJ, we just read off his driving numbers, 12.6 drives per game, 47% drive finishing on drives. He was the Raptors' highest volume driver. He was the Raptors' most impressive driver. He has, over the past couple of years with the Raptors, been over a decent size or sample size of catch and shoot three-point shooting, been like a 37, 38% catch and shoot three-point option. That is perfectly passable for RJ Barrett, for the type of player that he is. Now, him taking a step defensively, because he did play better defense this year, and he was a part of some of the Raptors' best defensive lineups, doesn't mean he's an impressive defender. That's not what that means. It does mean that he's not going to tank defensive lineups, though, and that is important. You can quibble, you can and haw about whether RJ at the very top end of who he is the type of player you want on your team. It's something that the fan base argues about all the time. I think there's great utility to what RJ does, especially on a team like the Raptors this past season, who was very selective in the types of shots they were taking and was very selective or very limited in the types of shots that they were able to create. So RJ took on a very difficult shot diet, even more difficult than Scottie's, I would say. And what rewards RJ's play style, I think, is hitting free throws. He has the control in the middle of the lane. He can play fast and he can play slow. He is, especially next season, if things break the right way, if the Raptors don't make a trade and they go into this next season with this starting five, RJ Barrett's going to be playing the two. And RJ Barrett at the two is going to physically dominate basically any player who stands in front of him. That's what happened when he first came over from the Knicks. He was playing the two, Scottie was playing the three, Pascal the four, and they would just run pinch post. And RJ, he scored a bunch of points in not so little time, and he was dominating, like completely dominating smaller two guards, even regular size two guards. And so that physicality usually rewards players with trips to the free throw line. RJ shooting 63% as a player at the free throw line. It's like borderline inexcusable, right? Especially since we see he can achieve other things on the court, especially since he was 72% as a Knick prior to coming over to the Raptors. And, Cosmo here says the last time I saw a drop off in free throw percentage like RJ was Russell Westbrook, and Russ never got back to his 80% shooting. Yeah, Russ was like on OKC could shoot like 84, 85%. He was a remarkably good free throw shooter. But he was tinkering because he wanted to be able to shoot the three, and he was tinkering with his jumper. RJ does the same thing, but RJ never had the high that Russ did. Although RJ, I'm pretty sure in the 26 games he played as a Knick before getting traded to the Raptors, I think he was shooting like 82, 83% from the line. And then obviously as a Raptor, he shot 63% on quite a few attempts at this point. But if RJ had made free throws at the same rate in Toronto as New York, his true shooting percentage this year would have jumped a full percentage on the season. And if he shot 80%, which if you're a grinder, if you're a talented player, 80%, you can get there. It's possible for NBA players to get to 80%. I don't think it's easy. I think it's quite difficult, but we're trying to plan out development, right? RJ, if he shot 80%, his true shooting percentage would have jumped 2 full percentage points. And some people might be saying, like, why is this the development you're choosing? I think RJ, you see how strong a finisher he can be. We've seen parts of that, but players go away from contact a little bit more, or they make different decisions when they fear the free throw line. If RJ improved as a free throw shooter, I think that he could lean more into some of the physicality that he's suited for as a player at the rim. I think he could do quite well in the trenches of the NBA, the paint. And especially since next season, he'll be operating more as a second side creator, as a cutter. He'll have easier matchups who he can dominate. I think that if he kind of sorts out the problems he's been having at the line, 80% is extremely lofty. 70% is an NBA player. 72%, that is so doable. It's just so doable. And RJ, if he doesn't fear the line, if he's competent there, his matchups get easier next year. I think we really could see the efficiency climb. And as far as like choosing this instead of just wanting him to be like a better catch and shoot 3-point shooter, like he's been like 37, 38% as a Raptor catch and shoot, which is not superb, but it's passable. He's not been unbelievable from the 3-point line as a whole as a Raptor, but his mechanics do not lend themselves to pull-up shooting at all. It's a very truncated load. He has a hitch when he gets to set his feet, lock in, and hit catch and shoot threes. I think he's perfectly passable. The thing that really changes RJ is his comfortability driving the ball and rewarding efficiency on those plays. Because RJ, I think, proved that he is an above average passer on the move this past season. And that's a really important thing. It's just about rewarding that efficiency on the back end. Sophia says RJ is in the 2011-12 OKC Harden role, a poor man's version. Joseph Cassidy says RJ playing in his normal role. I believe the free throw comes around. With BI, he'll get to do more of the things he's good at. He certainly will get to do things he's good at. And it was what he laughed about on the exit interviews, because I brought up the conversation we had at training camp when I was asking, IQ about RJ's cutting, and IQ said, IQ said that RJ cuts when he thinks he can score. And there will be opportunities working off of Brandon Ingram and Immanuel Quickley and Scottie Barnes and Jakob Poeltl. But RJ, it's the free throws for sure. I think it has like a ripple effect for his game, and I think it could correlate positively to a bunch of things. I'd like to see the free throws just in a much better place. The easiest one for me, and part of why the Raptors traded for Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram, over his past 5 NBA seasons, is roughly a 40% catch and shoot 3-point shooter. Just full stop. He's a very strong catch and shoot 3-point shooter. And what is it from Wolf of Wall Street? It's Matthew McConaughey's numbers. Like those are rookie numbers in that racket. You know what I mean? Like you got to bump those numbers up. I won't say what they were talking about, but it's you do need to bump those numbers up. He's a very talented shooter. It's why, that video essay I did about why the Raptors traded for Ingram and why Ingram fits what the Raptors are trying to do is like this guy who is a strong finisher, this guy who is a tremendously talented shot maker, this guy who has a lot of functional size all over the court in an offense that wants players moving and moving towards the bucket and catching on the move and attacking. Brandon Ingram is such a catch and hold player because he is so unbelievably talented when it comes to making shots off the bounce, off of his own creation. The Raptors will need that. Off-ball stuff doesn't work because the Raptors will be a playoff team next year. I hope. That's my expectation. And in the playoffs, clever off-ball stuff doesn't exactly move the needle. You need a guy to dribble, get to his spot, and make shots. We've seen it in many different series that the Raptors have been involved in many different series that they haven't been. This looms large. It shows up constantly. And Brandon Ingram, it's the catch and shoot stuff I think is emblematic of buying into the system. It's emblematic of abandoning more of the catch and hold style that he's played for so long. Movement, quick decision making, all that kind of stuff. His 3-point shooting, catch and shoot, is an avatar. It is the thing that messages that he has accepted this and he will play all this, like play to this style. Sophia says, how do we think Poeltl can elevate Brandon Ingram? I mean, Poeltl is one of the better screeners in the NBA, both as a guy on a handoff, being able to plant those screens. Like he's not Sabonis, but he's very strong at that. And he's also really good at knocking down angles for his ball handlers. And Brandon Ingram is certainly very strong at setting up players for the angle he wants them to hit the screen at. Like a flat screen, for example, is like walking up behind a player and choosing which side you'll screen them on based on how the defense is reacting, right? And Brandon is strong at that. He has a good handle. He is a very strong jump shooter. And I think like Poeltl can carve out room for him in a way that he didn't have last year, but he's had in the past. He's played with like Steven Adams and Jonas Valanciunas, and it won't be radically different, I don't think. However, we'll get to it for Poeltl's thing because I'll be talking about Poeltl's passing. I think that's where Poeltl can improve. I'll leave that tabled for this, but I think the passing, when I talk about Poeltl, is where it will elevate BI. Sophia says this may be the best passing team we've had this decade. Scott, Poe, BI, Harper. Yeah, it might be. It really might be. They're a very strong passing team. And but yeah, I think Brandon Ingram hitting catch and shoot threes, bumping up that number is a big deal. And I mean, if you want the full breakdown of how I think Brandon Ingram will improve this Raptors team, I think just type in Brandon Ingram Raptors and probably my video essay will come up in some form or fashion. Now, Immanuel Quickley, there's two ways this could go. I'm going to talk about the one that I think is more interesting but more difficult. So what happened with Quickley, when I was talking to Quickley, and I'll be retreading this point, but when I was talking with Quickley at the exit interviews, and he was saying how, I was talking about how players, they manage to get their shots off, like Kyle Lowry, like Damian Lillard, like these guys, and how players who are truly tremendous shooters who knock down shots, they change the geometry of the floor and they understand that they can take deeper threes and they have to be a little bit more aggressive. And Immanuel said that how he defended players informed what he thought about his own shooting, because when he has to step up on guys repeatedly and respect that deep pull and all that kind of stuff, it makes it harder as a defender and it changes the geometry of the offense and the defense. And he was saying that he's thinking very hard about how he's going to get as many threes up as possible because he doesn't shoot enough. Like Immanuel Quickley does not shoot enough threes, not close for his level of shooting talent. Now, I've harped on this forever, but his mechanics make it tough for him to get more threes up in the flow as far as like pull-ups. It's just, it is what it is. His mechanics have that limiting factor. Now, Lewis also brought up when we talked about this, the catch and shoot stuff. Catch and shoot threes are what needs to be going up rapidly. However, his mechanics are partly why it's easier to run Quickley off the line. And when Quickley is run off the line, what happens? Here we have from Lewis's article on Immanuel Quickley, which is extremely well written. Type in Immanuel Quickley, Lewis Zatzman on Google. I'm sure the piece will come up. It will be more in depth and more succinct than what I'm saying here, but after the podcast, please. So, quote, most importantly, in terms of skill improvement, Quickley has to get better when he puts the ball on the floor. Let's be as specific as possible. Quickley's inside the arc game is not as beneficial to his team as that of most lead guards in the NBA. There are numbers that show this. He's averaging 5.9 assists per game, which is 34th in the league and solid, just a tad below other shoot first point guards like Jamal Murray and Steph Curry, both averaging 6 assists per game. But there are indicators that show his assists are not coming in as beneficial situations. Of all of Quickley's half-court assists that led to layups or dunks, 5 total came after he touched the paint. 5, by the way. 5. Such assists are hugely productive moments, turning water into wine. That's what point guards need to do. Quickley simply isn't doing it very much. Okay, so this is something I've harped on for a long time. I've called the Raptors offense an assist farm. The Raptors, as we well know, are one of the highest volume off-ball action teams in the NBA. They rely on, because of their limitations as an on-ball team, the lowest points per possession in the whole league. They rely on being able to get the ball to places so that players can catch in motion, so that screens are doing the work and motion is doing the work. I tell you what, though, the Raptors do this, but they would not turn their nose up at a guy who doesn't need a screen and can just bend the defense and create great open looks for his teammates. They would not turn their nose up at that, and they need it desperately. It's great to be a future concept offense. It's great to be all these types of things. The Warriors are a great example of this now. The Warriors have Steph Curry, and they run a ton of motion stuff. They run a ton of split action. That is the crux of what they do. And yet, they radically changed their team by just introducing Jimmy Butler as a threat to get middle off the bounce in a way that Steph Curry can't, in a way that nobody on that team can, to play with control in the middle. Immanuel Quickley plays with no control in the middle of the floor. Zero. It's just really not a part of his game. He rarely ever makes passes to the paint. He doesn't touch the paint enough. And as Lewis pointed out, when he touches the paint, the whole season, 5 assists, 5 layups is what he created. Now, I know there is some people like the paint touch to the corner 3. That's fine, but it's much better. It's much higher points per possession. It's really good to pressure the rim when you get there. And Immanuel Quickley, it's tough to see him pressuring the rim as an elite scorer. I did this at the end of his, or I guess maybe early March. I was looking at the post All-Star break stretch that Immanuel Quickley had, where I think he was scoring like 20 points per game, 8 assists, 61% true shooting. And I was looking at the advantage assists that he was providing each game. And I was really impressed with the level of control he displayed in the middle of the floor. He was extending drives. He wasn't moving off the ball as quick. He was manipulating further and deeper into the court, which created more layups for his teammate, which created more opportunities that were ironclad opportunities for his teammates. And especially on a team that has guys like RJ Barrett and Scottie Barnes and presumably Brandon Ingram as a cutter and Jakob Poeltl, you want to get these guys layup attempts. You want the paint to paint layup attempts, the dump off to the layup. Those are just God. Those plays are so great. And I talked to Eric Spoelstra about this. I talked to Tom Thibodeau about this, Jalen Brunson about that. I asked so many people about this, about like playing with control in the middle of the floor. And Eric and, Tom both were of the position that like, that's really hard to teach. Like it is almost innate to a player's game, that level of control, that comfortability amongst the trees, especially for guards. And they both had, coached guys who were unbelievable at it. Jalen Brunson is one of the best in the NBA. He's too comfortable with physicality. He's a grifter. It bugs me, but he's an immense talent in the middle of the four. Eric Spoelstra, not only has he coached like Dwayne Wade and LeBron James and guys like that, but Jimmy Butler, one of the best operators from the middle of the floor in the world. And he also Kyle Lowry for a time, right? These are all guys who display like this almost knack, this otherworldly ability to navigate the small parts of the court when it's crowded and cramped. And Quickley is not very impressive at this. However, I think that the shooting will come and they will hammer on this. And the shooting is absolutely very important to what the Raptors want to do. Really, really important to what the Raptors want to do. They need somebody to provide that punch. And Quickley needs to be very diligent as a catch and shoot operator. He needs to be very diligent in getting those shots up, man. Launch from downtown. However, he is a point guard. He is a guard. He's going to initiate offense. As much as Brandon Ingram and Scottie Barnes are certainly the totem pole, Quickley sits a rung below both of them. However, totem pole, I call them below. Totem poles don't have rungs. Anyway, a ladder has rungs. Anyway, so as far as how he's operating, he does need to get more paint touches. He does need to be diligent and comfortable staying on ball, and he needs to create more looks in the paint for his teammates, whether it's his own layups, which don't come often enough, or drop-off passes to bigs, which don't come often enough because he doesn't threaten the middle of the floor properly. This is the hardest thing that's being asked of anybody that I'm asking here. This would make Quickley an unbelievably good guard if he was able to master his craft in this fashion. The three-point shooting, it will come in higher volume or higher frequency relative to his role, whatever it is. He'll be dialing it up, I'm sure. This type of development as a creator, it would really, really provide something to this Raptors offense. And it would change the trajectory of Quickley's career. I'm pretty certain. And he was talking about, at the exit interviews, his body, right? He was saying like, he wanted to put on weight. He wanted to do all that kind of stuff. I presume that this is somewhat to help him battle, if I had to guess. Okay, last one, Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl. This is a little bit what Lewis and I disagreed on, right? Caleb asks, do you expect the Raps to play a more physical type of O next year? Feels like Brandon Ingram's skillful shot making will free up RJ and Scottie to be dominant, along with the rookies just all getting stronger. Yeah. And then you said, oh, whoops, you basically answered my question. The Raptors, the same way that they did play a very bashy, crashy style of offense with OG, Pascal, and Scottie, I'd like to see them be able to do some of that. The Pacers are up 2-1. Gary Trent gave that 37-point performance. Hell yeah, Gary. Very impressive. And so, but Pascal, as a bash and crash, like mismatch monster, has been unbelievable in the playoffs. His post-up was the most efficient play in the 2024 playoffs of any play. Like the Pacers, the way they bash and crash and the way they target mismatches, I know they're seen as kind of like this frictionless offense, but they aren't. They have friction at every point on the court, and they really use their bigger players to, bash and crash on people, create space, and they create passing angles, and they actually care about making the passes in. And the Raptors, in my mind, between Jakob Poeltl, Brandon Ingram, and Scottie Barnes, and honestly, like RJ Barrett will get pinch post opportunities, and he will bash and crash a little bit. He'll even just get regular like duck in post ups on guys. I think the Raptors should be a big team next year, and they should be able to do that's a really great question, Caleb. And I think that the Raptors, in my mind, ideally, they will incorporate that. It's part of why I liked the Ingram trade right away, because I was like, there's some proof of concept here with what happened with Pascal. I know Pascal got traded and the defense fell off a cliff, but actually the Raptors did kind of sort out their offense by the end of Pascal's tenure with the odd, players' skill sets. You wouldn't have predicted it that way. However, they're definitely they were able to make things happen and figure stuff out. So Van Hoot 2234 says, how do you allow Brandon Ingram to become more of a catch and shoot player beyond the arc at volume when we lack a lot of creation beyond? It's the Raptors have a lot of catch and shoot 3-point opportunities. Everybody does. And Brandon Ingram has a high release point. Brandon Ingram, he can change. And this is why when I was talking about it, it's just like emblematic of him buying in, is that there are catch and shoot opportunities. The Raptors weren't light on catch and shoot opportunities this year. They were light on efficiency in play types. And because Darko runs, I think, a really great offense. But I think that Brandon, just that willingness to be a catch and shoot player immediately, to make quick reads instead of being like a catch and hold guy, that will create more opportunities for him. And also you're hoping for, I think, some progression from Scottie as a creator. I think you're hoping for some progression from Immanuel as a creator. And also you have to expect to some degree that Ingram taking the more difficult matchups on the wing will allow Scottie to break down defenses more often. It happened with Pascal, and Scottie is a better player now than when he was playing with Pascal. There will be ripple effects, I think, to this kind of stuff, but this is guesswork. It is hypothetical. I will say that. So Jakob Poeltl, and again, this is what Lewis and I disagreed on, was the playmaking versus decision making. And Joseph has a great point here, says Yak was so great this year, and you can tell he really cares for these guys. The high mom celebrations from the bench is one of my faves. Jakob has been really like a tremendous professional with this team. He's patient with players who need to really be spoon-fed some opportunities. He's patient with players who are really trying to figure out their own games. And he really brings it, and he facilitates the proper way of playing on offense. He really facilitated so much of what worked for the Raptors. So Jakob, it's not only that, his screening is essential and that it's not just his on-ball screening, but it's his off-ball screening. He brings a tagger when he rolls and cuts. He helps shape the offense, and he helps drag players into different places. He helps open up opportunities. All that stuff is very much, that's just like objective to me. But also, the Raptors' best play type last season was the pass to the roller. That is what Jakob provided more than anybody else, and it was the only play type that the Raptors were actually good at. And it was just like Jakob Poeltl is good as a roller, no matter who is dribbling the ball. Davion Mitchell and Jakob, for a time, were the sixth best duo, pick and roll duo, in all of the NBA. Davion Mitchell, I made the video essay about how he's turning his career around. I think that video has borne out. I mean, he's having a great playoff series. He's fit in Miami, and I thought Davion did well in Toronto. I know that wasn't exactly fan sentiment or even some analyst sentiment when he was here, but when I was watching Davion's game, I thought he was doing things well. But he certainly isn't like a dominant pick and roll ball handler. But Jakob was so good at sealing, screening, getting to his spot, making the push shot, and Davion was dutiful in making the pocket pass, the bounce pass to him, that they were killer. All killer, no filler, that duo. But Caleb says Yak being real on media day felt bad at the time, but really helped set the tone of positivity for the whole season. That was what I said too. I was like, what do you want Jakob to just get up there and say, oh, we're going for the championship? No, I hate when people want players to be braggadocious and just well, you're never supposed to say that. Like when DeMar was like, yeah, we'd win if we had LeBron too. LeBron went to 9 straight finals? Nobody beat him. Until it was the Western Conference. It was perfectly fine for DeMar to say that, to be like, damn, LeBron seems unbeatable. That's not, what are you supposed to be like? Yeah, we're better than him as you get beat again. It's okay for players to be honest. You don't have to put on the bravado, the machismo stuff all the time. And Jakob doesn't do that. Jakob is very honest, I find. Van Hoot 2234 says Davion did do well, but at the same time, the financial aspect loomed large versus a guy like Shed in, say, year 3 down the line. Uh, I don't think Davion will cost that much. Lewis and I had that conversation about it just like on a whim. I don't know, November or whatever. We had that conversation on a whim, and Lewis was like 10. It was like 9, 8 because it was the extension talks. But I don't think Davion will end up being expensive. Now you could like Jamal will be cheaper, but I I don't think Davion will be that expensive. I don't think they should. I don't think there was much worry about the money with Davion. If they liked Davion a lot, I think he would have just stayed there. But Davion is kind of like he's a hard ass, and he does make sense with Heat culture too. Like there's a little bit of personality stuff that went with that kind of stuff too. So yeah, but to get to the point about what Jakob needs to improve upon, I'm going with like his passing. I think Jakob is a very overrated playmaker. And I don't want to be too rude, but I like that stat about how Mobo, every time he plays 30 plus minutes, his 7 games, he averaged like 7 assists per game. This team will give Colin Castleton sleptwalked to 6 assists. Orlando Robinson could get 5 assists. Like the big man position on the Raptors is actually like an assist farm. You just get assists. And the Raptors as a whole, it's just like just move the ball on, they move around, an assist will fall in your lap. And Jakob actually this season I thought was too turnover prone and didn't make a lot of impressive passes and made a lot of like bad reads. Now, some of what this is could be he's playing with younger players and they're not cutting at the right time, all that kind of stuff. But I think Jakob, how he can improve is being a little bit more secure with the ball. And because the reads he has to make are not very hard, they're very accessible, they're very easy. This was B-Ball Archives on Twitter brought that up when I was talking about, some of the high-low big man passing that gets fetishized. Like I say, it's fake because it is fake. Like these are just like look at a guy, pass it straight type of reads. You're not reading motion in the back of the defense. You're not contesting with like a live dribble on ball defender. It's just, and then he cut together, a bunch of clips of Dennis Rodman, who was never ever talked about as like a great playmaker big, just making all the passes that like Jakob Poeltl makes and that like Colin Castleton can make. And I think Jakob, while I don't think he had an impressive playmaking season, I think that he has the potential to be a little bit better than this glut of guys. And it is because of his physicality as a screener, his ability to like loosen guys up with a screen. I think there's opportunity for him to turn the corner sometimes and live dribble, make those push passes instead of from a standstill. I think there's opportunity for him to coalesce with his teammates a little bit more and not turn over the ball so much because his turnover percentage is actually pretty high the last couple of years with the Raptors. It's because he gets more of the ball, but he does turn over the ball a decent amount. Cosmo, oh yes, dude. Cosmo says, I agree. I remember people saying Jaren Duren was a good passer coming out of the draft. I remember that too. They're like, oh, Jaren, he's like a sick passer. It's all just the basic high-low reads. I think I don't understand why those reads are fetishized. They're good, but the reward for the split action is not the big who makes the check down read, who makes the screen pass behind the line of scrimmage. It's who is the screener. Like when Draymond makes the push pass to Klay Thompson coming off of a split action screen with Steph, it's like, what created this advantage? Was it the pass? Or was it the fact that 2 guys were trying to follow Steph Curry up above the break? And Immanuel Quickley has had that happen a couple times too. Like the screen is where the advantage is created. Credit the screener and the gravity of the players, but like making that check down read is just whatever. However, Jakob, very strong as a screen setter and a creator in many different facets. Like Jakob is very strong, very good player. I don't want to belabor, like I don't want to be too down, but as a passer, there's improvement there. And the reason why I chose this is because Jakob is good at very many things. I don't think the jump shot is going to come around. He made a huge step as a free throw shooter this season. But what is accessible to a lot of bigs? The Thaddeus Young development, the Thagic Johnson development. A lot of bigs, as they see the speed of the game, year 8, year 10, they've seen so many different defensive rotations. They've seen so many different, they get comfortable with the speed of the game and they start making more plays. They start getting a little bit more adventurous as passers. And Jakob, I think there's room for him to do that. And we're back. All right. So anyway, big men, basically they get more adventurous as passers, and I think that is accessible and available to Jakob. Um, yes, Jakob hacked the stream. He was like, "Shut up, dude! Enough! I'm a great playmaker. I'm a great passer." Um, yeah, those 5 developments I think could provide so very much to the Raptors. We have Scottie's drive, and so these are wide ranging, but Scottie's driving ability and the excess, like there's different avenues. There's a million different ways to improve as a player, even in like driving. There's like a million things you can do on a drive. How Jalen Brunson succeeds is much different than Anthony Edwards, for example, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is much different than Jalen Brunson. And there's micro skills that dominate these aspects of the game. And Scottie, we'll see how it develops, but it's imperative that he does. Brandon, no catch and hold, getting up 3-point shots, really leaning on his shooting talent. RJ Barrett, free throw shooting. It will correlate down the line. It will improve some things. Jakob's playmaking, I think it's really important. And Immanuel Quickley, elongating his drives, getting down into the floor, feeling more comfortable in the trees. That stuff, if like 3 out of 5 of those things happen, the Raptors are sitting very pretty. If all 5 of those things happen, I think the Raptors will be in such a strong position as a team next year. Really, really good because, they did sort out a lot of the defensive issues this season, and it will be a whole different beast next year to figure it out. And they clearly don't have a backup big right now. That is on this roster. You look, that's the most important thing that they have to address. Fitting Brandon Ingram into everything will come with its challenges. You have to hope for Jacoby taking a step, Grady taking a step, all this kind of stuff. But this kind of stuff, these 5 developments, I think could really help launch the Raptors towards something really strong. Everybody in here, I want to see however long or however many people are in here right now. Make sure to like the video. That I want that number. I want that number of likes on the video. I'm asking, please. It helps spread it to other people who hopefully will enjoy my ramblings on about basketball development, which I think are probably good. Here's hoping. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. I'm gonna get out of here. I'm watching Sinners tonight. I'm finally watching it. I know Trey told me I had to wait 3 weeks, but I'm taking, I have no. I'm going. I'm not gonna let him tell me what to do. All right, everybody. Thank you so very much for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. I appreciate it very much. Okay. Yes, I have a chaperone, Caleb. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.